It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview Paul Baker, who owns Obey the Puck podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Brandon. Thank you very much for having me on.
That's good. Can you talk about how you knew you wanted to start a sports talk podcast?
Oh, it's funny. I didn't know I wanted to do a sports podcast. What happened is, actually, I'm the newbie on Obey the Puck. Obey the Puck podcast was started by a couple of friends of mine, Dan Calachico and Kelly Levy, who are huge hockey fans, and decided that, you know what, they wanted to do a podcast. They wanted to share their knowledge and have some fun with friends of theirs and talk about hockey. And one day they asked me to come on the show. I knew Kelly through some different, discussion groups and stuff like that. And that was that was 6 years ago. I've been on the show now. The Obey the Puck has actually been on for 7 years now, and I've been on it for the last 6 years. So how did I know? It just, when we started talking, we enjoyed each other's company, had some great conversations, and just went from there.
Can you talk about how y'all came up with the name Obey the Puck?
You would have to ask our host, Dan Calachico, about that. Obey the Puck, I don't know, actually. I've never asked him where he got the name from. So that's a great question, Brandon.
What kind of stuff do you talk about on Obey the Puck?
Okay, so Obey the Puck covers everything, soup to nuts. But I think where we excel is, it's a funny mix because Dan's a big Flyers fan, Kelly's a Washington Capitals fan, and I'm a Boston Bruins fan. So we've got a few rivalries that go in there, and we'll talk about the big teams. But where I think we are better than a lot of other podcasts is, especially, and I'm going to give all the credit in the world to Kelly on this, she is an encyclopedia of minor league hockey knowledge. And you can talk about a certain team from anytime in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, and she will know everything about that team, from where they played to some of their best players to their uniforms, and great stories about the franchise. So we will talk a lot about minor league hockey. Some of our best episodes recently have been about uniforms, because right now the teams are looking for your money. And so it seems like every few months there's new uniforms coming out. And we just did an episode recently about all the reverse retro jerseys that the NHL put out. We talked about all 31 of them, and it was just a fun episode. So we do that. We'll talk about college hockey and women's hockey, because I think that's where my niche is, really. I don't know if you knew this or not, but I am the PA announcer for the Boston Pride women's hockey team of the NWHL. So I've got a lot of knowledge about the goings on in women's pro hockey. So we'll talk about that. And I'm a big minor league hockey fan myself. So that's where we try to, we'll talk about the big issues of the day in the NHL, but we'll focus, I think, more on the smaller places that may get overlooked by a lot of podcasts.
Can you talk about, of course, whenever it comes to the big issues in the NHL, what kind of topics do you talk about?
You name it. Recently, diversity and social issues have been at the forefront, and the NHL, when they made their plans to play in a bubble, so that was a big topic of conversation. And for the record, just to show what we know or don't know, none of us thought that the bubble would work, and the NHL showed us that how wrong we were, and they were able to crown the Lightning as Stanley Cup champions in 2020. They were able to make it through, and it was very successful. I, for one, didn't think that it was going to work. So, goes to show you what kind of an expert I am. But yeah, if there's a big issue, we'll talk about. We're not afraid to tackle anything, and Dan especially can be really outspoken. So, yeah, he'll take on any kind of issue. We had a nice discussion one time. Uh, gender equity is a big thing for us. So the stuff that's been going on in women's hockey, the split between the PW, PHA, and the NWHL, and the folding of the CWHL all went down, and we talked quite a bit about that. That was a big focus for us. And another thing that we've done is we've had a lot of guests on the show. So we've had some play-by-play folks from different teams come on. We had Zach Fish come on from the Hershey Bears. We had the play-by-play guy from the Maine Mariners. I'm sorry, his name is escaping me right now. But we try to have guests on as well. We've had some old school guests who really are carrying the banner of old school hockey and the fighting. Some guys who run some hockey fight websites. So even though we're kind of more newer age hockey fans, we also love the old style stuff too. So we'll talk about anything.
Can you talk about, of course, how you came up with like getting the people for guests?
Sure. It can really depend. Sometimes we'll have a personal connection. We'll know somebody through something, but sometimes it's just as easy as cold calling someone. Let me talk. Zach Fish, for example, the Hershey Bears play-by-play guy. We had a fantastic episode with him. It was about a year ago, and we just reached out to him and asked him. Oh no, wait, this is a great story. I'm a season ticket holder in Providence. Okay, Kelly and Dan were at home. I live in Massachusetts. They live in Virginia, and they were listening or watching a game online, and all of a sudden my phone starts ringing, and it was Kelly who texted me, and she said, "Hey, the Hershey play-by-play guy is pretty salty about where they put him in Providence. Now the press box at the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence is not in a prime location. It's way up in the corner in the upper deck." So he was just kind of ranting about it a little bit. And so, oh yeah, so I went on. I'm sitting there at the game. My seats are right down by the ice, and so I texted him, "Hey, you're welcome to come down and sit with me if you don't like your seats up in the press box." And from there, we just started a little friendly back and forth. And so I asked him, "Hey, you ever want to come on our podcast?" And he was more than happy to do so, and we had a great episode out of it. So I mean, that's a funny story, but sometimes it's as simple as, what? Maybe we can get this person on the show. Let's reach out and see if they can. What's the worst that can happen? They can say no, right?
Can you talk about how, of course, with you working in the PA in the women's hockey, how has that helped you in building connections to make guests for the Obey the Puck?
Oh, it's been fantastic. We actually haven't had anybody on the show yet, not for a lack of trying, but with the NWHL having their season, they've announced recently that they're going to do their whole season in a bubble in 2 weeks up in Lake Placid at the Herb Brooks Arena. So they're going to follow the lead of what the NWSL did last year, and the WNBA, and the Major League Lacrosse and the Premier Lacrosse League, who did their whole season in a 2 or 3 week time period. They're going to do that at the end of January. But as far as how being the PA announcers helped me is, the NWHL is still pretty small. I mean, for the Boston team, we play at the Warrior Ice Arena, which is the practice facility for the Boston Bruins. So capacity is maybe 500 people, 750, maybe if you cram them in. So I've gotten to know the people who run the league through basically through face-to-face contact and through interactions on social media. So I'm not just a fan there. I'm part of the organization, part of the team. So that's been helpful.
What are some of your future plans whenever it comes to Obey the Puck?
Obey the Puck, just like all of us who are doing our podcasts and are out there struggling and making episodes and creating great content, we would love to be able to turn this into something that makes some money, right? or to be able to make a career, or maybe it leads to something bigger and better. So I know for me, just I went to broadcasting school a long time ago, but was never able to make anything of it. It's because life happens. You've got to feed yourself. If you have a family, you've got to make sure that you have a house and clothes and all the good stuff that goes along with being a human being these days. So the broadcasting always got pushed to the side. Now podcasts showed up. It's like, hey, anybody with a microphone and a laptop can put out a podcast. But to be able to put some of that training and skill to use And for me, it's led to a couple of announcing jobs. So it's actually been a very good thing for me.
Do you see that Obey the Puck could maybe one day be on a network such as a smaller network like ESPN, but still a sports network?
I may be a little biased, but absolutely. When I listen to some other podcasts, I think that we are just as good as anything out there. Anything put out there by the big boys. Absolutely.
What are something that you learned now that you didn't know before you started Obey the Puck?
Oh man, there was so much I didn't know. It's and I'm going to give credit to Dan, who not only hosts the show but does all the producing and the stuff. And one of the things that people may not know about, like if you want to, we're talking about growing our shows, and Brandon, I'm sure that you struggle with the same kind of stuff. How do you get your product out there? There's so much networking and promotion and stuff like that that's involved in growing your show and growing your brand, that it's not just let's do a show and put it online and there you go. It's not that easy. There's so much more that goes into it, as you well know.
What is your future plans whenever it comes to Obey the Puck?
Ooh, future plans. Well, we would like to continue to be putting out some great product, and I would love to start getting, more guests to the show. Dan and I do 2 podcasts together, and Dan's actually a podcast veteran. He's been doing wrestling podcasts and various other stuff for years before podcasts were a big thing. He was out there. He used to run a network called HIAC Talk Radio, which had, like a half dozen different shows on it. Now that's kind of scaled back, but he's still at it. He's been doing Obey the Puck for 7 or 8 years now. Before that, he was doing wrestling shows. So he's been doing this a long time. So yeah, we would love to be able to grow the show and make it more and more professional. And hey, you know what? Maybe someday the right person hears it and hey, we're able to actually do this for a living. That's the dream.
What advice would you give upcoming sports podcasts looking to get started?
I would say, don't take yourself too seriously. Have fun doing this, because the chances are it's not going to become a career. It's going to be something you do because you love it. So pick a topic that you love, have fun doing it, surround yourself with people who will also have fun, because I think that's something that my podcasts are great at, the banter. And we've actually gotten this feedback from guests, is that you guys really seem to have fun when you're doing your podcast. Don't take it too seriously. Have a great time and do something you love. Why would you waste your time doing something you don't love?
That's wonderful. Where can my listeners find Obey the Puck at on social media along with podcast platforms?
Okay, Obey the Puck has a Facebook page, and on Twitter you can follow us at Obey Puck Show.
Are you on any other social podcast platforms?
Yes, we're part of the VOC Radio Network. So if you go to your podcast search engine, type in VOC Radio Network, and all of the VOC Nation shows will show up. Obey the Puck, Stadium Journey. There's some wrestling podcasts, a whole list of them. So we're all right there.
That's wonderful. Thank you again, Paul, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with Obey the Puck.
Thank you, Brandon. My pleasure.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at @talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Paul, for your interview, and best of luck in Obey the Puck.
My pleasure, Brandon. Thank you very much for having me.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.